And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. Proposed in 2021, Witset's new child care facility will create a hub comprised of daycare, offices, counseling rooms, boardroom, community kitchen, multi-purpose room, after-school youth drop-in center, and a community cultural space. We begin today's Open Connection with Minister of Water, Land, and Resource Stewardship, Nathan Cullen.
A couple of things. We funded a bunch of apartments in Witset, which the provincial government, as you probably know, historically has never built any housing, particularly on reserve. But our government does, and it's because the need is so great. We have a housing crisis right across the board. And we've also been adding a lot of childcare spaces. And so we built a whole bunch new just this year in Witset, in Wet'suwet'en territory, as well as in Gitane country last year. And one of the really neat things, Robert, is a lot of these programs have space set up where every day elders are coming in and just being with the kids, but also a lot of language and cultural training and learning in a really, really beautiful space. So it was great to tour that facility. It's just getting going. It's going to help out a lot of communities and a lot of working families who just desperate for childcare. We also just bumped up a subsidy to childcare workers across the board. So now I believe they're averaging $28 an hour, whereas just a few years ago, childcare workers were making $18 on average an hour. So a $10 jump is really important to make sure that we're attracting people in because we need childcare right across the province, and we're providing thousands and thousands of spaces, and this is part of how you do it. You're always going a bit forward and trying to find out where the blocks are, because we know the waiting lists are there, the demand is there for people looking for affordable, safe childcare. Then we would build facilities, but you couldn't staff them, because if you're paying people $18 an hour in 2024, you're not going to get a lot of people applying, because that's almost not a living wage. So by not just helping fund the spaces, but also help subsidize the workers, essentially, we keep childcare costs low for families, which for the average family in the north here, it saves that family $900 every month in childcare fees. So you add that up, and I know families that have 2 kids in childcare, that's $1,800 a month, which is massive help, especially when the cost of everything is so high. So we also know, just on, for equality and for access for people wanting to get back to work, making sure there's childcare spaces available helps their family, but it also helps, I would argue, our communities in general.
Start passing on those oral traditions and those cultural traditions to the younger people. It was kind of it's nice to hear.
It really, and it's amazing to see, because not only are the kids just, glowing, and when they're sitting with elders and they're in a very natural way, just going through the learning of the vocabulary and the expressions and the words. We're doing a lot of that training in school, but this is sort of next level in the way that language works, right? It has to start, it should start young, but also in talking to the elders, how wonderful it is for them, right? Getting out of the house, being shown as the teachers of language and culture, and being respected that way every day. I just, a lot of elders have talked to me about how important and how much they cherish that 1 or 2 hours a day that they're able to go into the school and be with the kids. And I know the parents love it too. So it's just, should have always been. It wasn't, for a lot of real bad reasons, for a long time. And now we're trying to recover those practices.
When it comes to the housing crisis, because, let's be serious, we can't build a house that fast. But there's something called a secondary suite program. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
I have neighbors nearby where I live, and actually both sides, if I think about it, that are taking what was a pretty large garage, but it makes sense, but they didn't have the money to convert it over, get the electricity up right, get some plumbing in, and they're doing it now because there's a little incentive program where people can apply and they get up to $40,000 to help them build that secondary suite in the basement in what they sometimes call a carriageway house, like just the house out back, because that can bring especially affordable rent options to the market. We've been building more houses in BC than we ever have in our history, but we've been bringing in more people, and we don't really control the housing market, but we can certainly boost it. We don't really control immigration from other provinces or other countries, but we're also trying to bring people in to help with all those shortages of doctors and nurses and whatnot. So that crisis has been building for 20 years. It's on us now. And we're tackling it. And you just got to do a lot of creative things. There's no one solution to any of it.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The Secondary Suite Initiative program will help homeowners create new affordable rental housing in their communities. The program will provide a rebate in the form of a forgivable loan, a loan that does not need to be repaid if the homeowner follows the terms of the program. Let us return the conversation with Minister Cullen.
You can get a bunch of that money forgiven. What we're trying to do is make sure that the unit that gets created is also affordable and rented. We came down pretty hard on Airbnb in a lot of our bigger cities because we were finding in some neighborhoods 30, 40, 50% of the apartments and homes were being rented on very short-term basis, making it hard again for people to be able to rent affordably because, of course, all the prices would go up in those communities. We know that to incentivize owners to put in a rental suite is a good idea, but we want to make sure it actually solves the problem, right? That they're not renovating it, for another office for themselves or a spare bedroom for guests. That's not the point of the program. It's straight rental. And the great thing is for the homeowner is that you get help renovating, and now you got another source of income coming in, help you with the mortgage, help you with cost of living. And a lot of people are looking at this program in a serious way and they've never seen anything like it. I've had a bunch of calls from people that are just like, perfect. This is excellent. Keep doing more. You may remember their post office burned down some time ago. Proved really challenging to build it back, but in an isolated community like that, you don't have postal service. It's serious. And they're, hour and a half, 2 hours from Whitehorse. Stewart's doing really well. A lot of interest in the community, new homes being built. We're helping fund a new library, which apparently might be the first new public building they've built since the 50s in that community, which is kind of a striking thing when you realize it. But community's doing well. It's such a beautiful place too. And you're right, it is nice to go somewhere where it's actually winter. This weather we're having right now is, I don't know about you, but I just find it strange when I open the weather app and it's like, when's it going to get cold? When's it going to get snowy? We're really actually on a serious note concerned because all that snow that should be falling right now, it's got to come because we know from last year, those terrible forest fires we had, all the drought. One of the main ways that we are protected from that is if there's good snowpack, if there's lots of water coming down in the spring and the summer. We're running a lot of programs right now to help people keep water on the land so that when it does get dry due to climate change and other things, that we're able to keep people safe.
What do you think the BC government could do to help prepare for the upcoming wildfire season? Because like you said, it looks like it's going to be dry.
Well, a change we made just a couple of years ago was the wildfire service used to start up in the spring and then we would shut it down and let everybody go in the fall. We're realizing, and I think this is a good move, was that making it year round allowed people to be working in planning for the next fire season as well as recovering from the last one. The best thing, I think one of the things we can do is what I talked about before is how do we hold more water back on the land so that even if the rains don't come, we're in a drought type of situation. Farmers, ranchers, municipalities are able to hold back water when the rains do happen so that we can use it, so that we can get water out on the land. We're changing forestry practices. I think that's a huge part of it. We're also allowing for more what we call prescribed burns. So in part of firefighting has always been intentional burns to get rid of fuel. And as well, you'll probably see projects around the north, around communities in particular, putting up fire guards in walls, getting rid of a lot of that fuel that's on the ground to make sure that communities are safe if fires get nearby. Because we've had that experience. These fires are devastating. They're unprecedented, but no one's really counting on it going in any other direction than as bad as it is right now, or maybe even worse. So we just have to change the way we do things, our practices, and how we think about water, how we think about forestry, because otherwise we're incredibly vulnerable. As well as community protection and guards, there's also a program set up by the government. You can just phone your local fire hall and they'll come out and do an inspection. I had one done last summer, super helpful. Professional comes by, takes a look at the way your house is set, what kind of trees you have nearby, what kind of threats, and just explaining how fire works if it does come into the community. And not all of the fixes are super expensive. It might be taking out a bush here or altering a fence a little bit here. Some of them are more expensive in sort of how we build houses, but it's really good. Really encourage people to reach out, because heaven forbid a fire gets near town. It is reassuring to know that your house has been fire smarted and that and we know, we've seen it when there has been fires through communities, particularly in the south. When a community has gone through a program and protected itself more, you can just look and see the devastation one community over that didn't. And that's the way fire works. It'll always follow the path where there's more fuel and more opportunity.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Last year, the BC Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport awarded the Bulkley Valley Cross Country Ski Club $765,000 for their rejuvenation project. Let us return the conversation as Minister Cullen shares more of the details of the funding.
The Cross Country Ski Club here in Smithers has really had a jump in membership. And I was talking to them the other day. Our town's about 5,000 people or so, maybe a little more now. And there's 1,200 people that have seasons passes at the Cross Country Ski Club. So it's a little around 1 in 5. It's had really old equipment, and we were able to get them $750,000 to buy some new equipment, new trails. And it's just world class. It's just a really beautiful facility, but you got to be able to have a machine that works. The machine that we have is 10 years past its due date. Doesn't work, so works inconsistently, I'd say. But it was great to see. I like to see when funding happens that it's going to have impact, that people are going to be appreciative and using it. And cross-country skiing seems like one of those sports from the very, very young to the very old. It's pretty accessible, and you need a pair of skis and they can be 20 years old. It's not a problem.
It's a lot easier on the knees.
I've noticed that I didn't really get into it until a few years ago myself. I'm not very good, but as runners, we know at a certain point, the pounding, while still good for the soul, can be not so good for the joints. Skiing's a lot better. Man, it would take you a long time to ski all of it. I know people have, not necessarily all in one shot, but I want to say north of 70 kilometers worth of trails. That might be too much. I don't know. It's a lot. I know you can do it 30, 40K ski and not go over your own track. So it's at least that much. And it's one of the better clubs in the whole province. It's really got a good history. We put out a lot of really great skiers. And like I said, anytime I look in a community and you see, 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people a part of something, that's a well-supported activity. It's worth finding ways to keep it going.
Is there fees involved on being a member of the club?
Yeah, I think there's a way, if you don't have a lot of money, to be able to ski very affordably. But I forget what my season's pass might be $120 or something, $140. It's, when you think about it, if you go up and ski, it's super reasonable. It's you got to avoid the expensive skis. That's the risk. You look at these fancy bits of equipment, but no, it's really good and really community based. really like, I love those things where everybody feels like they can participate. Some of our sports are a little more exclusive in that, you need quite a bit of money. You need a lot of time to be able to jump in. I like those ones, the hiking trails, the, affordable pools, that kind of thing. I think that really makes it so there's more equity in our community. It's that being healthy is not just for people who have a lot of money. This is probably, I remember years ago, I was helping out with one of the centers that help women, particularly women and kids. I know the men too, but predominantly women and men. And the provincial government that day had just cut all their funding. Just, it sent them a letter and said, you're done. And I thought, well, that's got to be some level of cruelty where you're sitting in Victoria and you're thinking, how we're going to save money this year is we're going to do this. So when I was able to get into government, this was one of my priorities. It's at a very personal level for me. So there's 2 new facilities that the Northern Society for Domestic Peace opened up just last year. They're now fully running. 40 beds in total in Hazelton and Smithers, and just proper homes for people that need to get out of, as you say, an unsafe situation. It's just not good enough to say, why doesn't she just leave? It's like, well, okay, let's find out what the barriers are. And often folks don't have a place to go. And so when I saw those funding grants come through and now those buildings up and running, it's an unfortunate thing that it exists at all, but it does. And so we as a society, we as government, take that responsibility seriously, and we should each and every day.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Most relationships have difficult times, and almost every couple argues now and then. But violence is different from common marital or relationship problems. Domestic violence is a pattern of abuse that a partner, a former or current partner or spouse, uses to control the behavior of another. Northern Society for Domestic Peace provides one-on-one counseling and support to men who are concerned that their behaviors are hurting those they love and want to make changes to improve their relationships. In this final segment of Open Connection, we discover how Northern Society for Domestic Peace funds this counseling.
I don't know. That's a good question. I attended one in Prince Rupert as well as one in Smithers, and they were a ton of fun, a lot of work, raised a lot of money. I don't know. That's a good question. I almost fear to ask though, Robert, because if I ask, then I might end up being a contestant. And it is just so much work. It involves questions of shaving and all sorts of other things. And I'm just terrible in heels. And the swimsuit competition just terrifies me. So hopefully they're doing something, but I don't know. I know they had a good few years around with that and raised a bunch of money. And that actually even changed that. I remember when maybe probably 20 years ago, a friend of mine was running some of those counseling sessions. These were men who had been court appointed, like ordered from court because they had committed an offense and had committed domestic violence. And I was chipping in money to pay for the coffee and the donuts. And we were both volunteers. And I remember thinking, wait a second, like if we can prevent and get one of these men to stop the abuse, like what is that worth? Like in terms of saving human life and misery, why are we doing this off of little fundraisers? So that program actually got funded. I'd have to check back with NSDP just in terms of men. And again, it doesn't have to be men, but it's predominantly who self-identify and saying, I need some help. I feel like I might, and I don't want to. I'll look into that, see if that's not yet covered, because man, of all the things that we spend money on, again, just makes easy sense to me that this is the stuff that we should support without question.
Now we're getting ready for, I guess, a new session, a new budget. Any tidbits that you're hoping to slip in there that might help the northern community?
Christmas just passed, but I already have my list. Yeah, I'm really, I've been concerned for some time that when you go to visit folks in hospital, I had a friend pass just before the holidays, and the hospital is doing the best they can to take care of him, but where he needed to be was in palliative care. And I'm looking up and down the hallways, and there's just lots of people there that should be in long-term care. They should be in that kind of facility, not in the emergency ward of the hospital. And sometimes we run 60, 70, 80% of the people in hospital are not there for what would normally be like an illness or something. They're just elderly and they need home support and they can't live at home anymore. So I'm really pushing for both Smithers and Hazelton. We really need long-term care facilities. They're incredibly expensive to build, as we're seeing in the hospital in Terrace. The price for building any healthcare facility these days is outrageous. But I also know that, in a way we're going to spend the money one way or the other. Like, we're either paying for people to be in hospital beds and burning out staff and crowding our facilities, or we bring them to a place they and their families would much rather be. So those are my big ones. There's a whole bunch of other funding that I'm hoping we're getting for conservation and salmon recovery, restoring watersheds, a lot of that stuff. And I'm a big small business fan. I think any support we can bring to small business is worth it. They're the lifeblood of our communities. And it's been up and down the last few years for a lot of our local businesses. We've got a lot of work to do together in getting funding for our municipalities. There's a thing called the Resource Benefit Agreement that we've been trying to get over the hill. It's really tough to do, but it's really worth it. And it would stable out our communities to consistent funding. The North, like the economic numbers just came out today for Canada and BC. BC is leading the country again in economic performance, job creation. I'm really interested in making sure people have opportunities here, a good place to live, a good job, and that there's education opportunities for our kids and ourselves. So those are the primary focus for me, and I just love it living where we live, and just want to make sure it's affordable and sustainable for everybody. There's two announcements we made today, which we're really excited to see because of how much they're going to help our communities, both in the Hazelton area and as well in Smithers. So I'll start with Smithers. There's $2.3 million to help with bank erosion that's been going on and threatening 22 different homes and their waste treatment facility there in Smithers. The rivers are changing, and when the rain comes and how intense they are. And so we're having to build that up. And that's also true for Hazelton, which is getting $6.4 million to help them essentially do the same thing, protect a number of homes and also roads. That some of the most critical roads in the community that connect people to town are being threatened because the rivers, the erosion is coming on in a different way than it ever was before. So we're really glad to see this get out and get it out when it's not in a crisis, not an emergency, because as you know, when the crisis comes, everything just costs so much more, and there's so much more worry as well for people who live there.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.